Hello again. Okay, so my impressions on Hunter the Vigil. I've run a very long campaign, a chronicle of Hunter, at least 40 sessions overall, I think. And yeah, a few things that I've found. First, like certain games out there, this requires a special type of dedication from the players, that they make a character that already has a story even before the play begins, in order to really hook them in. Because if they don't have that story, then all those great concepts of loss and sacrifice and stuff like that, they are watered down to a point where they don't really matter anymore, at least to this character. And it's just not fun if you're playing a guy who's basically, well, he's not immune to damage or immune to mental stress, but is just there along for the ride. You should have some sort of significant buy-in before you start this game. And luckily these different societies and of course the storyteller and other players with their backstories, they can bring that up even if you don't come to the table with a clear idea in your head about what you're going to do. In addition to that, I would say that the storyteller here needs to know when to really go for combat and when not to. And the not to is the more important part here. It's not a combat game. You can have a lot of combat, especially if you're running like Task Force Valkyrie guys, but if you're constantly just throwing them in fights, well, they're gonna die. And you might think, okay, well, that's okay, it's hardcore, you know, they die, then they make another character. Well, guess what? The next character will have a bit more buy-in than the last one. A bit less effort put into it. And then that one dies. And then they make a third character, and you know what? It starts getting boring, the action. If you constantly are pushed to the limit in this game, it's not going to work. There has to be variety in the challenges. There should absolutely be some critical fights, but you shouldn't have one at every play session. Like, let's say you play for, you have a story in mind that takes maybe 2 or 3 sessions, and each session is around 4 to 6 hours. I mean, that's my usual, I mean, it's usually 6 hours for me, but you know, again, groups may vary. But it shouldn't, you shouldn't feel pressure as a storyteller to, on that first session, to go out like, oh my god, they haven't fired a single bullet yet, this is going so badly. Don't sweat about it. This is more about the mysteries and the horrors than it is about the shooting. Learn when to, you know, there's a time and a place for everything, I guess what I'm saying. And try and build your plots so that they're not always forced into open conflict. I know it's a big part of the theme of the game and so on, but I would say that in addition to all the great advice that are in this book and the Word of Darkness core rulebook, don't press the issue that they have to fight. Don't always do that, like, okay, we haven't had a fight in 2 gaming sessions, so now we have to. they might not, your players might not really be into it if they're already into the other stuff. They might see it as a distraction even. I mean, sure, it's fun to roll dice, but World of Darkness is not a gaming system meant just for combat. There's no, it's not its focus. There are rules for combat, but that's not the focus. Anyway, something to keep in mind when you run a game. And as a player, you should remember that just because you have a lot of guns, the things in the dark might not care, might be immune to bullets. I mean, if it's just a blob of acid that's vindictive, you're not going to stop that with bullets. And even in fights, players, be creative. Creativity is usually rewarded by the storyteller. But yeah, a word on house rules. Vices and virtues. Now, these are in the core book, and it's a good addition. Stuff like prudence for a virtue and gluttony for a vice. More than just write those down, I had my players give at least one sentence long description of why and how. How does this manifest? What does this mean? Why is this guy prudent and gluttonous? It's a good addition, I think, to have a bit more explanation than just something that affects willpower randomly. And then there's humanity. I removed it entirely out of the game in Vampire, and in Hunter I don't really have a specific like a ruling on stuff that involves, like, there's a character sheet in the back here. Let me just check real quick. In Hunter it's called morality, and I don't use that. I instead use a system that I built myself based on Unknown Armies, and it has those 5 different aspects of mental stress and how a character can harden towards certain types of stress and fail in some other aspects, so that they can break down in different ways, and these things affect their behavior and the way they view the world. Yeah, and that was by far the biggest house rule change, was the mental stress and insanity system that I implanted. I think you can probably figure out how to make your own if you read Unknown Armies. It's not that difficult. On the combat front, I removed all merits and powers that give extra attacks. I think they slow the game down significantly. I saw this in Vampire, and yeah, actually later on I did something even more drastic, where I removed all combat oriented merits. Stuff like, I think it was double tap, stuff like that, because it might give some players the wrong idea that, yeah, if you want to create a special badass, these are the combat merits you have to take. And it those combat merits create a sort of inequality between characters. That, let's say we have two characters with pretty similar attributes, both are very physical characters, both have firearm skill at 3 and brawling skill at 5, or well, not 5, that's pretty high, but okay, maybe 5. They're world-class brawlers. Depending on how they spend their points on merits, one of those guys could whoop that other guy's ass without any problem just by picking certain merits. I don't like that. I think the fact that you have certain attributes and certain skills should already give you a clear advantage, and it does. You don't need all sorts of, and it complicates the combat further, which I hate. There's no reason for it. I don't see any real reason to constantly add complexity to something that should be kept as simple as possible, so that you can move on through it and get on with the story. And the basic combat rules are complex enough already. There's plenty of variety there. Other than that, yeah, I give experience on a lot of things. This is the final part of my house rules. They can get them from just from role playing. They don't always have to hunt, and they can get them at certain points where if a particularly tough investigation ends, then I might give everyone a big XP bonus in both their personal experience and practical experience as well. And the practical experience pool that they have, I found that it's the best if it's like, okay, somewhat of a group consensus on who can draw points from it and to what. And if it's always just one guy, like, oh, can I get points for this and that, and the other guys will soon enough go like, yeah, no, let someone else have the points, and they're in this cell too, and or you know, maybe we want to save up points for a safe house and stuff like that. Overall, I've said it before and I'll say it again, my favorite game of the new World of Darkness lines, and in general one of my favorite games. And yeah, I think that's about it for this whole long review. If you've come up with some questions, or maybe things that you want me to clarify, or just bring up maybe some experiences with World of Darkness or other horror games, and how you found them and how you think this might measure up to those. Yeah, might be an interesting discussion. Thanks for watching. I know this was a very long one, but that's why I chopped it up into bits. And I'll be back another time with probably not another review. I have I think Call of Cthulhu, since I'm on a horror trip right now. Might review that in the future, but yeah, next video will be something completely different. Thanks, and have a nice day.